Born and raised in East Oakland, California, my next guest walked away from a life of bad choices to follow God's call, one that led him all the way to Canada to serve in the local Canadian church. He's a pastor, musician, author, and founder of LoveQuest International Church in British Columbia. Pastor Terrance Richmond, welcome to 100 Huntley Street.
Thank you.
We're so glad to have you joining us today.
Absolutely.
You know, growing up in East Oakland with your family, what was your sense of God like? Or did you grow up in a Christian home? Did you see faith modeled for you?
Yeah, my mom had me at 21, so very early. A year before that, she lost her father. Around the same time, my dad went to prison, and so she's a single mom. I'm without a grandfather, without a father. My grandmother's a single mom, and so I'm raised by women in this city. And my grandmother chose to follow the Lord. My uncle, her son, on crack cocaine. And so there was no male influence in my life aside from going to church on Sundays and Wednesdays. But it was a Christian home. I saw prayer. I heard hymns in the kitchen, and very rich in, I believe, the name Jesus, Jesus being the way. But also I feel like in that time you saw a lot of mixed lifestyle. It was church, but then Saturday, Friday night, you also, smelled a lot of marijuana and smelled a lot of alcohol. It's just a lot of lifestyle in that culture that came with a lot of oppression and how people just tried to cope with a lot of things that happened in that time.
Yeah. And of course, so many people live that duality where maybe they're living one way through the week, and then on Sundays they're going to church and they know who God is. They know who Jesus is, but they're not quite following him the way he wants us to.
Absolutely.
When you talk about not having a male role model, whether it was your father or your grandfather, or even your uncle, all of these men who are not available to you, how do you think that impacted you growing up as a young man?
It greatly impacted me. It wasn't just my story. It was an entire few generation stories, even to today. I think you're starting to see the father re-enter the home, but it wasn't just, dad didn't get along with mom. It was also, just the way systems created, like there were benefits women had if the father wasn't in the house, right? Mm-hmm. And so in order to take care of children, what do you choose? It's like, dad's like, okay, let me get out so you can get that benefit. Mm-hmm. For me, it was insecurities, it was identity, it was masculinity, but also a lack of femininity. Although I was raised by women, I didn't see how the two work together. Right? So you had to choose one because you saw one heavily modeled, but God created male and female, and within God himself is both, right? It's like I needed that healthy balance, how to treat a woman. But I think I learned to appreciate women more and understand women more, but I also lacked how to be a man for the female because I didn't have that modeled. I didn't have a dad in the home. So a lot of things were absent for me. It wasn't just having a dad in the house. It was also not having a husband modeled in the house.
Going back to your younger years, you became quite a talented athlete, like very talented. So baseball, then into basketball. Tell us a bit about that story, but also how some of your upbringing and the lack of fathering impacted this incredible story of talent, but then maybe not completely realized.
Yeah, I think genetically, hands down, there's just the athlete genetically, but I also feel like sports played as a babysitter for a lot of households. Mom had to go to work. Coaches were the male figures in the life, so it helped raise me because I had a coach who would pick me up while mom was at work, drop me off. And so for those few hours, I was around male influences, which most single mothers needed their children to have that. It was what we all did to try to stay out of trouble. And it was something that saved my life, but it also was something that gave me more opportunity because it exposed me to a diversity of cultures, cities, because I had to travel, certain levels of discipline. And then I think I just kind of stumbled upon minor league baseball for the California Angels. Again, a lack of father. When things got tough, I just walked away. And as a single mom, she was like, okay, whatever, baby, whatever, you want to come home. And I wish she was like, no, you're not coming here, but you need to stay. But I didn't have that. So I went on and played basketball. Basketball allotted me opportunity to get my degree and, again, travel, diversity. And God used that. He used it tremendously, and it helped me be a better communicator. I think a lot of the issues we see in a lot of places, poverty, sure, but that poverty, what it robs us of is exposure. And with a lack of exposure, you have no vision to see beyond where you are. And you live under this ceiling, and a lot of times it's not high.
You know, eventually you received love from God, your Father.
Yeah,
you,
absolutely.
surrendered to him. But it wasn't without, challenges, because you'd gotten into some trouble after your athletic career. You met your wife, Julia, and you hit this breaking point, and actually sort of together. So tell us what was happening around your life then, and what happened.
Yeah, so so for me, in my journey of trying to find who I was, clearly that's what I was on. So I did everything from baseball to basketball to fire academy to being an EMT to working at Foot Locker, Taco Bell, movie theaters, all of these things. I was out partying, found my wife, she found me, didn't at all go out to find a wife. It just was one of those things. And so as much as I was partying, I had enough consciousness of who God was and the power of his love. And I wanted to introduce my wife to Jesus, although I wasn't quite walking that way. And she encountered, probably about 8 months into our relationship, she encountered Jesus through, I had a relationship with some friends, and their daughter really mentored Julia to her salvation. And then my wife just she found Jesus, and then we had gotten married, and we had our first child, Malia. And I think at that point, the partying had to cease. It started with my wife because she wanted a healthy marriage. Healthy pregnancy. And then shortly after that, we were having Malachi. And it was at that point that I heard the Lord just say, son, I can't go any further. And it wasn't that he was leaving me. I had enough sense. It was at some point I was going to begin to experience the fruit of my sinful, not just nature, but actions. And I was like, I don't want that. And so the fear of God came upon me. June 2007, I walked away, cold turkey, alcohol, heavy marijuana user, clubbing, just that whole lifestyle. He got a hold of my tongue, he got a hold of my mind, he got a hold of my body. And from June 2007, I laid it down and said, yes, Lord. The call was to be a minister of the gospel. I knew that for a long time. And it's been up from there. And that, me as a man answering my call, turned everything around in my family. And I think that decision also ended the cycle of fatherlessness in my bloodline. I didn't have men in my bloodline that said yes to the call. And I think that's a huge contribution to the fatherlessness in my house. I didn't just want to be present. I wanted to be active, and I wanted to engage with my children, and I wanted to heal from my brokenness, and I wanted my kids to be a part of that journey of seeing a father and a mother with a heart of repentance. And that was the greatest decision of my life. You would say receiving Jesus was the greatest decision. I would say following Jesus was the greatest decision of my life. And they're two different things. And I feel like a lot of people stop at the cross, never enter in the door and walk in their resurrection life. And 2007, I got up.
Such a beautiful story, Terrance, and such a proclamation of what God can do with one life when we are obedient. And today you and your wife lead Love Quest Church in the Surrey, BC area.
Yes.
Tell us a bit about the vision of that church.
Oh, wow. It is to love all nations. It is to equip the church. It is to mobilize the equipped, and it is to serve all. We are an equipping church with the apostolic prophetic DNA and we are a house full of creatives, house full of worshipers, and we're a marketplace-focused church as well. So we're equipping for the marketplace. That's where ministry is.
Yeah.
And so we have a diverse group of people, from generational diversity, cultural diversity, ethnic diversity. And it's smack in the middle of a place called Wally, right in city central of Surrey. And it is vibrant. Started off with 11 people. 5 of those 11 was the Richmond 5, which is my family, and 6 others. And we are now seeing just a tad bit over 300 a Sunday between a couple experiences. And we are a growing, vibrant church led by an immigrant family. And we planted it from the ground up. And God's doing some miraculous things in that church, and we're here to stay.
Well, you know, global Christian leaders across the world believe that Canada is on the precipice of revival and awakening.
Absolutely.
And I believe that, you know, the call of even your family coming here to minister to the local Canadian church is part of that. You're also part of Royal Anthems, which is Crossroads Music Initiative, because you're a very talented musician. And you took part in the song Good, Good Day. We're going to see it in today's program. So, you know, what has it been like to be part of Royal Anthems?
Royal Anthems is a phenomenal vision. I think we need to have more collaborations and projects like this. And I do believe that Canada, this is what I feel, that Canada is the David of the world. I believe Canada's been hidden in the background, dealing with its insecurities, dealing with some of its passivities, and but I feel like Canada is being called to the front line and gonna face its giants. And I feel like the sound is going to be the one stone that's going to slay down a giant, that is going to open up the floodgates, not only for Canada, but because of the global representation that is here, it is going to be a revival that is going to bleed into the world.
You talk about Canada being called to serve God in this way, but also about people being called.
Yeah.
So you have this experience of knowing who Jesus was, but not choosing to follow him.
Yeah.
For that person watching right now who actually needs to make that decision to follow Jesus today, like actually turn to God and say, I'm going to follow you.
Yeah.
What would you say to that viewer directly right now?
I would say following Jesus and receiving Jesus is 2 different things. He stands at the door of your heart and he knocks, and it's your job to let him in. And once you let him in, then he's come to bring life to you, a life of joy, a life of peace, a life of comfort. He's not there to take away the challenges of life. He's there to walk through them. I think he can be your best friend. He could be your best guide. He's your savior, but he's also your landlord. He's there to protect you. He's there to keep you. And I would say it's the greatest decision you can make to follow Jesus. Look, you've already let him in. Why not follow him? You've taken one step, take the second step. And I feel like it's important to your purpose. It's important to your sanity. It's important to your relationships. Following Jesus will lead you to purpose. If you don't read one book, if you don't look at one YouTube video, if you don't follow any inspirational videos on Instagram, I'll tell you, if you follow Jesus, it will be the best decision of your life. You will have storms, but I'm telling you, you will have the storm calmer. You will have the sea parter. You will have the miracle worker in your life. And I'm telling you, it is the best decision you could ever make in your life. And don't worry about being perfect. And don't worry about putting the drugs down. Don't worry about getting your marriage right now. Let him in your life. And I promise you, everything else will fall in line. Greatest decision.
Terrance, such a good word. So much strength in what you've just shared. Terrance, thank you for sharing your story with us today and for all you're doing to serve God here in Canada.
Thank you for having me. Keep doing it.
Well, friend, I want to talk to you directly. Maybe you have just responded to Terrance prompting that you are to turn back to God now, that you are to serve him, and whatever might be holding you back, whether that's fear or doubt, or even feeling unworthy because some of the decisions you've made. Can I tell you, you are not alone. Every person that God has called has wrestled with being called to follow him. Moses questioned his calling. Gideon doubted his calling. Jonah ran the other way. And you know, I've even done those things. But here's the truth. God is calling you right now to serve him, to turn back to him, because he has great purpose for your life, and he calls you out of his great love for you. If you want to rededicate your life to Jesus today, if you want to say a big yes to the God who loves you so much, please call our prayer partners at 1-866-273-4444 and continue to call them, because they can encourage you on that journey as Jesus walks with you to the next step of your life.